Right. Well, I will go ahead and get started and we'll let people to continue to come in. But welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today as we just talk about movement and in the recovery space and what that looks like for people who are struggling with eating disorders, people who work in the eating disorder space. We're really grateful that you took your lunchtime to just be with us and to have a conversation about this. A couple things that I just want to cover before we get started. So my name is Kristen Soto. I'm with Rock Recovery. We are really, really excited to be partnering with Clarity Fitness for this event and with Alsana, our generous sponsor, who's partnering with us for this event. We're going to go into our bios and share a little bit more about who's going to be speaking today. But before I do that, I just want to reiterate that this session is recorded and we are going to be sending that out to all the registrants after the event today. And then also, the first part of this will be an educational piece, and then we'll leave the last 10 or 15 minutes or so for Q&A. And so feel free as we're going throughout the event and questions pop up, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. And then once we start the Q&A portion, I will stop the recording. So you're also welcome to just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. And so I will turn it over to Abby from Clarity Fitness to get us started with our bios for today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kristen. We are so excited to be here. This is Abby Griffith, the Clarity Fitness owner and founder, and we are an eating disorder informed fitness studio on the downtown Decatur Square, which is just east of Atlanta, for those who might not be familiar. And we are incredibly passionate about providing really mental health forward, accessible, positive fitness experiences online and in person, and can't wait to share more later in the presentation. And I will go ahead and pass it over to Stacy. Kristen.
Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone. As I mentioned, my name is Kristen Soto, and I am the Director of Partnerships at Rock Recovery. For those of you who do not know Rock Recovery, we are a nonprofit based in Arlington, Virginia, right outside the DC area. And our mission is to support people on their journey to freedom from disordered eating. And so we provide individual and group therapy services to adolescents and adults. We provide nationwide support groups, and we also offer community education and partner with wonderful organizations like Clarity and Alsana to just help eradicate stigma around disordered eating and to get people connected to the resources that they need for care. Our services are also offered online and in person, and we offer significant sliding scale and take insurance so that we can really remove that barrier of cost that also often prevents people from getting the care that they need. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Liz, who is also with the Rock Recovery team.
Hey everybody, my name is Liz Barrows and I am a former client of Rock Recovery, and now I am so grateful I am a board member of Rock Recovery. So let's talk about a full circle moment there. I'm going to be talking a little bit about my story a little later in this, but before, I just want to let y'all know that dog in that picture, that's not my dog. That was the photographer's dog. Okay, I asked if I could hold it. So in case you needed to understand my personality just a little bit, that is who I am. So I am going to turn it over to Kat.
Hi, good morning. I'm excited to be with you all today. I am Kat, or Catherine Jordan, and I'm the Director of Clinical Services at Alsana in Birmingham, Alabama. I have been with Alsana for 8 years now, 9 years now, and I started off as a dietitian here. So program dietitian, did that for a few years, lead dietitian for a few years, and I've been in this role for the past 3. I think I have a really cool job getting to balance kind of clinical and operations. As I mentioned, I am in residential, so clients are in our care for 24/7. We also have PHP and IOP in Birmingham, and then Alsana's all across the US. So multiple levels of care in different states across the country. Stacy, I think you're next.
Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm Stacy Jenkins. I get the pleasure of working with Kat Jordan and her team and the Alsana crew across the country. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the Regional Director of Outreach, and I support Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana in terms of provider relationships and client referrals, as well as making outpatient recommendations for our clients too. So happy to be here.
Thanks, everyone. So you probably saw this on the Eventbrite page, but just our goals for this event today is to really develop a deeper understanding of what disordered eating is and what it is not. And so we're going to talk about common misconceptions and misunderstandings. We're going to hear a personal story from Liz, who's going to share about her relationship with movement and recovery and what that looked like. And then we'll close out with talking about what it looks like to support a positive relationship with movement as you're either navigating recovery yourself or supporting someone in recovery as a clinician or a family member. And of course, close out with resources and tools for support. And so we would like to, as we dive in, get to know a little bit about who's here with us in the room today. And so we want to start with a few quick polls. So if you could just drop in the chat, what is your role in the mental health and wellness field? What is bringing you here today? Are you a community member? Are you navigating recovery yourself? Are you in the fitness space? Are you a clinician, a medical provider? So just drop in the chat so we can see who's here in the room with us. See, we've got some clinicians here. Lots of therapists coming on to learn. We've got some people in recovery joining us today, eating disorder advocates, some interns, physical therapy assistants. Awesome. This is so, so great. It's so wonderful to have such a diverse community here to talk about this. We've got a dietitian, someone in the health and wellness field. Wonderful. So, as you're sharing a little bit more about your role within this space, I have hold up fingers, but you can also just drop this in the chat as well. If you could share a little bit more about thinking, 1, being not at all, and 5, feeling like you're a total expert. What is your understanding of weight inclusive fitness and movement? Where do you think you fall on that scale? 1 being, I don't even know what that means, and 5 being like, this is my jam. This is what I do. Okay, we've got a good range here. A lot of people falling in the middle section, some people on the higher end, some people on the lower end. Great. This is great. I also love that nobody put a 5 because everyone's here to learn a little bit more and to just grow in their understanding of this. So thank you so much for sharing this. All right. So we're going to get started with trying to understand a little bit more about what is disordered eating. So just a few facts and things that we know. So there are about 28 million Americans alone who will suffer from an eating disorder at some point in their lifetime. And this is really just thinking about a diagnosed eating disorder. This doesn't even take into effect body image, dieting, some of the other things that fall within that range. So it's really so many more who will struggle. Eating disorders do not discriminate. They affect people of all genders, races, backgrounds. And so it's important that we understand that this doesn't look the same across different cultures and different people. So that people don't get missed when we're looking at diagnosing and understanding the symptoms of disordered eating. Anorexia nervosa is the 3rd most common chronic illness for adolescents, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the different eating disorders within the DSM-5, anorexia nervosa being one of them. Of looking at military in particular, which is very big. We're in the DC area, so it's a very big community out here. About a little over 40% of active duty Navy men meet the criteria for OSFED, which is another one of those DSM eating disorders we'll talk about. And nearly 98% of active duty females meet the criteria for some type of eating disorder. So there are a lot of people out there who are struggling and who are affected. And then looking at certain groups of women in particular, and again, we know that eating disorders affect all genders, but just looking at women here, about a little over 30% purge. People are regularly skipping meals. So eating disorders are so ingrained within our culture that we often don't realize that that's what people are struggling with. You just see it everywhere. And so I'm going to dive into a little bit into the different types of eating disorders. Again, these are just those within the DSM-5. This does not include that range of disordered eating that we often talk about, which would include dieting, overexercise, counting calories, all of those things. So the first one is anorexia nervosa, which is a very serious, life-threatening eating disorder that's often characterized by self-starvation, restriction, and excessive weight loss. Next, we have bulimia nervosa, which is also, and I just want to say that like all eating disorders are very serious. All of them can be potentially life-threatening. So this is an eating disorder that's characterized by a cycle of binging and then purging. So there's some compensatory behaviors, whereas anorexia just includes the restriction piece of things. This is binging and then compensatory behaviors such as vomiting, purging, overexercise is another compensatory behavior, which is designed to then undo or compensate for the effects of the binge eating. Binge eating disorder is characterized by recurrent binge eating without the compensatory behaviors to then counter the binge eating. So that's the difference between binge eating and bulimia, is the compensatory behavior piece. Then we have ARFID, which we often see in younger kiddos, but it can also present in adults as well. This is a type of eating disorder where there are certain foods that people will limit themselves to certain foods based on the food's appearance, the texture, smell, taste, or having a certain negative experience with the food. So ARFID doesn't always include that body component of it, but it's more about the food itself. And then we have OSFED, which captures feeding and eating disorders that are not included in the other ones that I just mentioned. And so those are the 5 different eating disorders that are defined in the DSM. And then again, we have several others that fall within that disordered eating range. And so from there, I'm going to turn it over to Abby to talk a little bit more about misconceptions and the stigma around eating disorders and disordered eating.
Awesome. So up next, we're diving into debunking some misunderstandings. I've been personally in recovery myself, and so with my lived experience, a lot of the data that's been coming out has been really helpful to shift my understanding of what it is that I went through, help me get clarity, pun intended, on what it is that I can do to be an advocate to prevent people in the future from going through something similar and support people that are going through that. So hopefully these are helpful light bulb moments for y'all in terms of care for people and care and self-compassion for yourself. So the biggest underlying misunderstanding that we see specifically in the movement piece is a belief that if someone follows a diet or workout plan correctly, they will lose weight. It is just not that simple. It is dangerous to have this set of beliefs, and there's a lot behind that. For the sake of a 45-minute presentation, the 3 points I wanted to bring to y'all's attention were that a big chunk of this is genetic. So 95% of diets fail. And then when they fail, we're getting into that blame, shame spiral and trying to quote unquote do it better the next time, then getting more frustrated with ourselves and then getting more rigid. And it just spirals that way. Cultural beliefs about dieting, health, and weight loss are everywhere and are really toxic and skewed in the stigma direction. So that does not help with the blame and shame. And then 60 to up to 90% of a person's body size is genetic. So if we are following a diet or workout plan correctly, we're going to be what our genes want us to be regardless. So that helps with self-compassion. That helps with understanding that it's not our fault, and hopefully one day can steer you away from that diety shame spiral. Issues with the concepts of health today. I'm not going to go through all of these, but y'all are more than welcome to check them out or take a screenshot if you want to review them deeper. But basically, nutrition is really focusing on a place of weight loss, dieting, rigidity. And when we are stuck in that headspace, we're really missing a lot of taking care of ourselves and listening to ourselves. And unfortunately, fitness falls into that realm as well. When we think about movement as means to quote unquote fix a problem or change our body or quote unquote make up for what we have eaten or have not eaten, we're missing the point of what a potentially really positive and fun relationship with movement and body could be. And that is what we're going to talk about more today. A little bit about clarity, and we're moving along so quickly, you guys. A little bit about clarity. This is our fitness studio in the downtown Decatur Square. As I said, I'm in eating disorder recovery myself. So this space exists to create that positive and safe space, as safe as it can be. Obviously, no spaces are entirely safe for everyone, so I don't want to claim anything like that, but we do focus a lot on the intentionality of where are mirrors, where is the lighting, where is the space broken out so that we can really foster dignity and connection and privacy simultaneously. What types of classes do we do? How are the trainers trained? How do we do continued education? All of these things are really thought about in the lens of trauma-informed and eating disorder-informed to create a really positive environment for people that are moving through that journey. Happy to talk more about that if anyone has any questions on what that looks like. But for the most part, this is the 1,000-foot view of the space in person. And then this is our online component. We offer virtual personal training and have an on-demand class library, as well as some really fun movement resources there, all geared toward it being your own movement journey. And there's so much behind that. We're going to get more into the nitty gritty soon. But I did want to just share that as a resource if anyone's interested in learning more, if anyone is interested in checking that out as ideas for how they can make their own space or their own fitness community more empowering and more supportive. There's a lot that you can pull from there from different dietitians, therapists, and experts that we've leveraged in the process of building it out. Up next, we wanted to get a little bit into the science. This is my all-time favorite study, and I always laugh when I say that because it sounds so nerdy, but this is my favorite study, and it really captures what we've been saying in previous slides. So bear with me while I lay this out. On the x-axis, we are looking at number of habits. So we're going to use healthy has a lot of stigma in itself, but for the sake of just this conversation, I'm going to use the word healthy lifestyle habits, starting at 0 of those up to 4. And then on the y-axis, someone tell me if I'm doing that wrong. Pretty sure up and down is y. We have the hazard ratio, which is basically boiled down to mortality rate. And we see in the 3 different columns. So for example, there's 3 different columns above that 0 healthy habits marker. We see the smallest BMI, again, another thing that has a lot of issues, but we can talk about that in another webinar. We see the smallest BMI group on the farthest left up to the largest on the farthest right. So when we are dividing people out by these markers, we see that 0 healthy lifestyle habits makes a pretty significant difference when we're looking at hazard ratio. But then we incorporate just 1 habit. The BMI has not changed. Body shape and size has not changed. We're still in those same buckets, those same categories, and we see things come way more even. We add 2 habits and we're at a point of statistical insignificance 3, 4. So this is showing that when we see people in different body shapes and sizes, it's not about the body shape and size change. It's not about weight loss. It's not about getting to a lower BMI. It is about incorporating behaviors that can be supportive and positive for our health and longevity, and that's what's making the bigger impact on our life. Again, this is a conclusion of weight not being connected to health, or weight having less of a connection to health than a lot of the healthcare models want us and insurance models want us to believe. And we're looking at 4 different habits that really aren't that extreme, which I like to highlight as well. So we're looking at exercising or moving our bodies 12 times a month, and it said moderate exercise. So this isn't running a marathon 12 times a month. This isn't working out every single day. This is a really sustainable amount of movement. Obviously, depending on the situation, things change, but I thought that this study was so helpful because it really showed that it doesn't need to be extremes, and we don't need to focus on weight loss to make a meaningful impact on our well-being. Up next, we also recognize that there is rightful concern in incorporating movement in the eating disorder community. Obviously, in that community, we need to be really careful about how we're integrating movement. We need to be careful about the reasons why we're incorporating movement and the approach that the movement professionals are having those conversations. And we also are seeing different studies that are stating that supervised exercise treatment actually helps compliance with recovery programs. So there's really incredible work being done here. There's really incredible data. And again, it does come back to what type of movement we're doing and for what reasons and what our headspace around the movement is. But there's a lot to show that if we're conducting these behaviors with a professional that's eating disorder informed, trauma informed, positive, all about connecting with relationship with movement, really positive things can happen to mental and physical health for our eating disorder recovery friends. I am going to pass the mic over to Liz, and she's going to share an incredible story.
Oh, wow. I sure hope it's incredible. That's my goal. That's my goal, folks. So if we can go to the next slide, I just want to introduce myself quickly because I kind of grazed over that there at the beginning. So you'll hear my accent. I'm from Southwest Virginia, right on the Tennessee line. And I now live in Northern Virginia. I've been married for 15 years and I've got 2 wonderful children. They are 11 and 9. I put some of the activities that I absolutely love to do right there. And I also shared that, I struggled with an eating disorder for over 20 years, and really didn't even realize that I was in the thick of an eating disorder, for much of that time. And I eventually sought help for, my eating disorder in 2018. And I am so grateful to say that I joined the board of Rock Recovery in this year, 2024. And I'm definitely one of those corny people that says freedom is possible. Never thought I would be one of those people, but I am, and I am so grateful to be. So when I was asked to share my story with you all today, I was filled with the most gratitude for the opportunity. So I want to start by saying thank you all so, so much for having me today. This is such an honor to be here. Our bodies are meant to move. We thrive on it. And yet, many tend to abuse that privilege due to the negative thoughts and feelings about our body. And by many, I mean the old me. So, at a very early age, I was introduced to the cognitive distortion, all or nothing thinking. And Ricky Bobby says, if you ain't first, you're last. I mean, that was me, y'all. Perfectionism was afoot, and I took that mentality with me through my childhood, through my young adulthood, and into my, let's call it regular adulthood. I shifted from enjoying movement to using it as a punishment to combat the negative self-talk. I developed an eating disorder which controlled the majority of my life, and a huge part of that was over-exercising. I would eat something that I deemed as bad, and I would punish myself with exercise. I'd have an argument with a friend, and I would punish myself with exercise. If I didn't get that promotion, I would punish myself with exercise. My distorted brain had decided that if something happened that was not in the realm of good, I deserved punishment to become better so that the bad wouldn't happen again. Not rest, not compassion, rather, extra time in the gym without properly fueling my body. I had forgotten how much I enjoyed playing and dancing and movement. I had lost that foundation of what movement is all about and why I loved it so much. So during my recovery from an eating disorder that made an attempt at my life more times than I can count, I realized that I needed to break up with the punishment mentality. This also meant that I needed to step away from the obsessive exercise regimen and heal my brain so that I could heal my body. Over that time, my mind began to heal, but my body was still suffering. Movement is essential to overall health, as Abby just pointed out, and that part of my recovery was not happening. Therefore, I could not fully recover. I was terrified, y'all. I had no idea how I'd be able to get back into movement because all of those rules that I had put into place had been debunked throughout my recovery journey. I had thrown away my scale. And I say that, but I need to give you all the gravity of that. That was a huge deal. That was a huge deal. I'd thrown away my scale. I no longer counted calories. And at this point, I felt like I had no metric of what success looked like. And y'all, I'm competitive, so I needed to know. So I didn't realize that the real metric of success in movement are the smiles on my children's faces when I have the energy to play in the pool or to take a walk. The real metric is when you go to a park to take a walk, to breathe the air and see the trees, to like actually pay attention to the trees. The real metric is when you go to the doctor and the body that carries you through this life has a functioning heart and lungs. It has blood that pumps freely, and it has joints that are limber and bones that are strong. These are those metrics of success, and they are all necessary for our vitality. So I'll end this to say, movement is part of my fuel, and I love it so much. And I am so grateful to have found it on the other side of this recovery journey. I am so truly grateful for this body that I was given. So thank you all so much for letting me share this story with you all. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can answer those at the end. And I think I'm going to turn it over to my new friend, Abby, again.
Thanks so much, Liz. That was incredible. Total goosebumps everywhere. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Up next, we're going to elaborate a little bit more about what a positive relationship movement looks like, as well as give y'all some tips that you can use for yourself, for your clients, and in life with friends. As Liz just shared, stepping away from the scale is a really, really incredible big step to take. I too broke up with my scale in recovery, and it was life-changing. These scales that you see in this picture here are all smashed. They're a little far away, so I like to clarify that, but this is in our wall front and center when you walk into Clarity as a symbol to remind people to step away from that and that that number doesn't matter. I think that it's an incredible thing to recognize that the number on the scale is not tied to your health. It's not tied to your success, to your worth as being a human being. And people, whether you're in recovery or not, can benefit from that messaging. So stepping away from that. There are also a lot of incredible resources to help make that break, including cards that you can present at a doctor to request not to be weighed. That can be a tricky conversation to have, especially speaking for myself, in a people-pleasing state where you're still getting your feet under you from recovery. It can be tricky to advocate for yourself in that way. So this is a great tool to have a conversation that you may not feel comfy having just yet. Up next, we wanted to share a quick little breakdown. I did see that there are some people in the fitness space on this call, so I'm really excited for y'all to see this slide. Feel free to take a picture of it as well. But this is the 1,000-foot view of some verbiage shifts to make I love verbiage shifts, and if you don't shift the whole headspace, the verbiage will not entirely be shifted, and things that could be problematic will creep up in different ways. But for a start, I wanted to address some of these because I think that it's a really incredible start to shifts that need to happen in the fitness industry. I really truly live in a world now where I don't think that the things on the left column are being said anymore. And I continue to be proven wrong and continue to hear clients come to clarity saying that their trainer from last week, Tuesday, said work out to earn XYZ. And that's really upsetting. So we hopefully all in this call recognize that fueling allows for movement. I like to describe food and working out as two totally separate, both totally incredible pillars that are independent of each other. We don't do one so that we can do the other. So we don't work out to give ourselves permission to eat. We don't work out because we have eaten. We fuel our bodies well, and we work out to take care of our bodies in a way that feels good on that given day, which could be different than yesterday and is going to be different than tomorrow. So that is a major key and a really triggering verbiage to use in fitness climates. Giving 110% to your workout also makes my eyes twitch because this is saying to override your body and just lay out everything you have in this workout all the time. Honor what your body wants today is more of the name of the game. Don't give up is coming from a positive place, but it's still not quite there. We need to remind people that if they take a break in a workout, if they take a break from working out, that's awesome. And that rest is progress too. So saying on the say this column, it says, what if rest was progress too? And I think that is much more incredible verbiage to bring to fitness classes, to bring to personal training interactions than push through the pain or don't give up. Last but not least, a lot of times when we give options in a class, we accidentally use verbiage like this is a regression, or if you can't do this, do this. And it's subliminally or very apparently saying that one option is better than the other. So we at Clarity like to say, here's an option and here's an option. And maybe you can do the quote unquote harder option, but that's not what you want to do today. Maybe you want to mix it up and it's actually a challenge to try the easier option, all in air quotes for those who are listening like a podcast. But I think that that's an incredibly powerful conversation to just present two options and not make one better than the other. Last but not least, echoing what Liz was sharing about non-scale victories, the victories that really matter. We have a wall at Clarity that has all these different cutouts of non-scale victories that people can sign as they achieve them. It helps people who are navigating what is success, what is progress in the movement space, and gives them tons of options that have nothing to do with aesthetics and nothing to do with overriding your body. So these are some ideas, as well as just having the important conversation of finding goals. If you're goal oriented, intentions are what I'm more connected to, that are about empowering yourself and encouraging you to listen to your body instead of some of the more objective metrics that we might see in the fitness space. And my one final tidbit on non-scale victories that I always like to remind people is that unfortunately, we from this presentation know that diet culture is sneaky, and we see a lot of things. If you were to Google non-scale victories, you would see things like sized down in my jeans. And that is still a scale victory because even though it doesn't involve the actual number on the scale, it's still shrinking your body. So I really want to encourage people to step away from aesthetics if you're looking at those types of wins entirely, and that can really have a positive impact on the conversation you're having with yourself and having in the movement space in general. And I'm going to pass it over to the one and only Kristen for the next slide.
Thanks, Abby. I really love that chart you created, and as the first point, especially talking about the like earning or having to burn off certain food, especially this time of year, the holiday season, that talk is everywhere. It's often like it's either said in a serious context or in a joking context. And so I think that was just like a super, super important point to pull out because we hear it so frequently, and it's important for us to be able to both move away from that mindset and for you to feel empowered to advocate for yourself when it comes to things like that. So don't be afraid to speak up or share when that kind of conversation makes you feel uncomfortable or is harmful or triggering to your journey or to the space that you're in. So thank you, Abby, for highlighting that. The next tip is honoring your or your client's recovery needs. So I think it's really important to remember, and Abby's talked a lot about this during this presentation, is every body is built differently. Every body has a different color, a different size, a different shape, a different ability. And so movement is not a one size fits all experience. It is about understanding where your body is at in this moment on this day, understanding that that is going to change from day to day um, based on how you're feeling that day, based on how much rest you got, based on life seasons. I had a baby back in December, and movement looked very different for me. Still looks very different for me now than it did before I had a baby. And so just understanding that things change throughout life, and that's okay. And your recovery needs will change along your journey, as well as Liz shared in her story. And so just make sure that whether it's for yourself or for the client that you're working with, that you're honoring those needs, and looking at people as an individual, not as, again, like a one size fits all type of mindset. And I just have to shout out, this is our wonderful team at Rock Recovery, and we have our All Bodies Rock shirts on, which we absolutely love. And I just love that our team is full of different sizes and shapes and colors and abilities. And so then for our last point, our last little tip is really understanding the importance of rest. And that was the non-scale victory that really stood out to me, guilt-free rest. We've talked a lot about the importance of movement, but rest is just as important because you cannot move if you're not getting the rest that you need to be able to do so. And so understanding that on some days, movement and rest might be like just sitting and doing some deep breathing, rolling your shoulders back and forth, and that's what your movement will look like for the day. And on other days, it might be going for a walk or something. But in the moments where your body needs rest, it's really important to honor and acknowledge that. And that is not a thing to be ashamed of. That is not a thing to try to fight against either or talk yourself out of, like Abby stated with some of that language. But it's something to honor. In the same way that we want to honor when our bodies are hungry and fuel them and feed ourselves, we need to honor when our bodies need time to slow down and rest. And so with that, we're going to go into, I think we're going to go into some of the resources for care. Yeah. So a little bit more about Rock Recovery. I shared this at the beginning of the call, but we are an outpatient nonprofit. And so all of the care that we do is at the outpatient level. And so we're seeing people who are meeting with a therapist once or twice a week based on what their needs are. We have our therapy services, which are both, we have individual therapy, meal support therapy groups, and body image and recovery skills focus groups. Those are offered in person in Arlington, Virginia, and virtually across DC, Maryland, and Virginia. We also have nationwide peer support groups for those who are looking for more of a community, because we know that there is power in community. And then we do a lot of these free educational trainings and empowerment sessions to make sure that people have the resources to support themselves or their loved ones. And so you all have my email from the event. My contact information is on the slides. And so if you have any questions about Rock Recovery and how we support people through the eating disorder journey, please feel free to reach out. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Stacy to wrap us up on resources and take us into Q&A.
Thanks, Kristen. I wanted to share a few of Alsana's resources here with all of you. We do a few things that are client-facing and provider-facing, just to offer information within a click on the website. So we have Alsana's Learning Lounge. That's a place where clients and providers can learn more about all levels of care at Alsana. We do that monthly. It's on our website, and I have it linked here, but I've got more information that I can send out if you need it. We also offer free ED screening assessments on the website. This is a really quick way for a provider to sit with a client and maybe answer the screening, seek some information on whether treatment or a higher level of care and support would be appropriate for the client, or it's something that the client can do themselves, and just take a moment to see, if they're showing behaviors of eating disorders, or if it would be a good recommendation for them to seek some treatment or some support in that area. We also allow clients to check their insurance on the website. I know that sometimes finances can be a barrier to treatment, so we want them to have access to a really quick answer of, hey, will my insurance help me with this? Will they cover this? And then we also do a free online support group every other Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and that is linked to our website as well. And I wanted to point out that I'm not the only outreach director at Alsana. My amazing colleague, Molly Dixon, is in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. So I know that some providers may be coming from that area, and I will drop her email address in the chat too, because I want you to have access to her if you may be in that East Coast location, and while I'm in Georgia. And then here are some additional resources to websites and programs that we all find helpful in sharing with clients that are seeking treatment and support, or in need of some financial assistance in seeking that treatment or support. The Alliance, Project Heal, ANAD, IADEP, and then some social justice and continued education at the bottom. Okay, we're going to jump into some questions. I did see one